Welcome to Writing Easy, the podcast that takes the act of writing, which can sometimes be not easy, and tries to make it less not easy. I'm one of your hosts, Mary Mascari.
And I'm your other host, Melissa Long.
Today, we're going to be talking about one of my things that have actually been getting me through this pandemic. One of my favorite things. We're going to talk about D&D. So roll initiative, anyone. Here we go.
Yay! I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of D&D the last year. D&D stands for Dungeons and Dragons. It's a tabletop role-playing game invented by Gary Gygax in the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there, wherein it's basically kind of a collaborative storytelling game. But the real fun of Dungeons and Dragons is that you are storytelling collaboratively. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about my experience with D&D. I've been a dungeon master, DM, for 2 campaigns, and that's the person who kind of puts the story together and sets up the scenario for the rest of the players to do. And I found that it's really kind of cool as a writer, it's just like a whole new medium to work.
It is fascinating. So I will say I know very little. I have attended one thing that was D&D related where I spent the entire time making a character and then played for 30 minutes and then had to leave. So, I understand the concept of it, but I've never really played. And the people I was with, they were not the greatest. So I didn't feel comfortable going back. So I'm very intrigued, especially as you had mentioned earlier, well, I guess in 2020, about being the dungeon master. I was like, well, what does that mean? And how are you using it? And I'm like, I'm so curious about how it enhances your storytelling skills. And it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm eager to listen and learn and to just explore with you.
Excellent. Yeah, it is a lot of fun, especially if you get a good group together because, like I said, you're playing together. You're playing pretend, just like you did when you were a kid. But there's a little more structure to it, and it's a blast. So as the DM, I bought a module. You can just buy adventures online where it just sort of lays out the world for you and says, okay, here are some of the things you can do. Here's some of the things the characters can go after. So you don't have to make it all up. You can actually just go off the book. And I did that for a long time. Now, what I loved about that is it was a really great example of a reference for world building. You read books and you learn from the book how they do it, but that's the finished product. This is kind of one step back. These are some of the raw materials. And honestly, even just looking at that helped me think about my own world building a little bit differently. Because I could think about, what would I need to structure? What are some of the things I can do? What are some of the hooks I can use that would pull a player in? What are some of the problems that could have the players encounter? What are the problems that they can go into? And thinking about it that way, then that translates really well to scenes. And so, I find that now that I've been doing this for a while, I sometimes start thinking about my writing from like I'm a DM, but I'm also all the players. But I really like the way it's a way of breaking it down a little bit, so you can see the world building a little more behind the scenes.
So do you find that being like a DM versus being a player, did you get that same benefit from being a player in terms of the collaborative storytelling and your creativity and how it affected the way you thought about writing?
Yes, because the other hat that you have to wear, obviously, as a writer is you have to work on your characters. And when you are a player, you have your character. And you need to think about your character. You need to flesh them out, just as if you were writing them. I mean, you can just be like, oh, I don't know, I'm just like this elf, I do stuff. But it's more fun, and it helps since you are telling a story, helps you role play a little better, helps you make decisions better in character if you start thinking about who the character is and what they're about and kind of getting a handle on them. I'm playing in another campaign where I have my character, and I was really struggling with him because I was like, I want him to be. He was kind of a lawful good. He's a monk. He's a kind of a very heroic sort of guy. And I was like, yeah, he's kind of boring, right? Because he's just good. And so I talked to my DM and we worked together and we came up with some ideas of how to make him more interesting and how to give him some flaws and stuff. And so that character design process is exactly the same as what you do in writing. but I like that I'm doing it with someone, so I get some help. And I can work with my other players, so I don't have to come up with everything by myself. And it's just a nice little, it's a practice. It's kind of a rehearsal run for the same skills that you use when you're sitting down to write, when you're doing it all by yourself.
Yeah, and what I was surprised at when I moved out here to LA and started meeting other writers, I found a lot of TV writers love D&D and other role-playing games, and it is because it's the collaborative storytelling nature, and that mirrors what happens in a writer's room. Whereas like you're walking into somebody else's show, the world that they've created, you're helping them develop characters, and then you're like giving perspectives and ideas on like what could happen, right? And so it is very much the same kinds of, that impromptu storytelling is the same kind of skill that you see in the writer's room in terms of throwing out pitches of like what could happen or what should happen when they're outlining the whole season arc.
It does have that very same vibe. It's very collaborative, and I could totally see that. And since as a writer I'm by myself, I don't get that in my fiction, or my prose, I guess, because D&D is fiction too. But playing D&D has really given me that. The other great thing is that because so many people play it, there's a ton of resources. So if I get stuck, if I'm not, I can just Google stuff and get ideas and inspiration. And some of it is, here's my thought. It's free on Reddit or whatever. Some people sell modules, sell characters, which is great. You can buy that stuff. And I find it really, it's a good jumping off point. And then what's happened is for this Curse of Strahd game that I'm running, I was following the module, but now I've been doing it for about a year, actually a little over a year, and I feel a little more comfortable. And now I'm starting to improvise. I'm starting to change it up, and it's given me more confidence. So again, I think it's a nice exercise. So I start off with kind of the training wheels on and learn. And I'm learning the system. And I'm learning how to be a DM because I'd never done it before, but I'm also kind of feeling more confident in this mode of storytelling. And now I'm starting to create my own stuff. Even though I launched off this given thing, I've taken it and now it's completely my own creation. Mine and my players, we're working together. But it's just another place where you can kind of work at it without, while you're away from your desk, while you're not necessarily sitting and bleeding out a page. You can play a little bit and you can develop those skills in a little lower risk area, I think.
So how long does it usually, like you were talking about running multiple campaigns and like a year. So like, is there an end like goal for each campaign or does it go as long as people are interested?
So it depends. You can say like, okay, so I bought this module Curse of Strahd and there is a thing at the end. I've changed it. Although my players don't know that. Although now they do if they listen. Now they kind of know. But you can say, yeah, we're going to play this campaign, we're going to finish this, and we're done. And actually, your players level up. And at a certain point, they get so powerful that you can't give them anything that's interesting. Like you're like, I don't know, you're going to fight God now. And that literally can happen. You're like, oh, you won, now you're God. So I think we're going to roll up some new characters. Right. But, I also know people who've been running games for years. They just kind of keep twisting and turning, and maybe this character dies out, and they roll up a new one or they change it. I don't know. But it's really kind of up to you. And the other cool thing that can actually happen is your character can die. Your character can get killed. I had that happen in one campaign where the character died. She just blew up and she was gone. Like, starting over. And it's nice because then also you have high stakes, right? Because you can die. You do take damage. You do get hurt. And you start to see, though, in doing this that bad decisions are more interesting. And it can help you build your courage a little bit, too, to put your characters in danger, not just to, like, be mean and hurt them, but to have them make bad decisions justified on who they are and let the drama come from that, which can sometimes be a little scary when you're writing, to have your characters make a bad decision because you like the characters, you're close to them. So I found that that's helped free me up a little bit too, is because I'm like, oh, my character's going to do something done, and learning, getting rewarded for that with some excitement and some drama and some fun things that come from it, and so that helps me become more courageous as a writer to say, yeah, I'm going to have this character do something dumb, and then see the fun that comes from that.
So how would one get started? Like, what if I'm listening to this? If there's a listener out there like me who's like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Like, how do you get started without feeling completely overwhelmed or intimidated by all these folks who've been doing this for years?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is to, you can actually, there's a lot of live play podcast and YouTube videos where you can watch people play or listen to them play a game. And I found that super helpful to learn how the game works, and to see examples. So ones that I would recommend, Adventure Zone is a good one. It's a podcast, not another D&D podcast. They have a podcast that's really good, and they're very good players. They're actors and writers, and so it's interesting. Dimension 20 they have a YouTube channel and a podcast. Again, just really great stuff. And then the big mama of all of them is called Critical Role, ROLE, where it's a bunch of professional voice actors doing it, and that's been going on forever. But if you watch and or listen to these, that helps you kind of get a feel, so you feel a little more confident about how it works. But really, to get started, you just got to grab some of your friends, and someone's got to bite the bullet and be the DM. And basically, that's what I did. For this Curse of Strahd games, like, I want a game. Hey guys, anyone want to play? Yeah. Who wants to DM? Crickets, right? Because it's a little more work. It's a lot more work.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want this to happen. I'm going to do it. And I bought a module, so it's not like I had to write the whole story. So I bought something off the shelf, bought the module. It works so well to do remotely now. It's the best way to socialize now. And just give it a shot. Try it, That's another great thing about D&D as a creative outlet, is that the stakes are really low. Because you're with your friends. You guys are all playing together. If you screw up, you go like, you know what, I'm not really ready tonight, guys, so we're just going to kind of see what we could do. In fact, that actually happened last week. I didn't have time to put together the encounter that I wanted them to do. And so I was like, well, I think we're just going to kind of, role play a little bit today, just kind of let you be in the space and bring a couple of things. And it was the best session. We had such a good time because we were all committed. We were all working together. So you're not on your own. You're all helping each other. So to get started, long story short, get some friends, buy a book, listen to some of those podcasts or watch some of those YouTube videos to get the feel of how it works. Just go for it.
I love it. That is my assignment. So I have a group of ladies who all committed to doing this. We were supposed to start in like the end of January, and we haven't come together yet. We haven't been able to get everybody on the same page with schedules. But I'm really excited about that, because I think my first exposure was like people that I didn't really know. So there was already issues there, and they were kind of like jerks and very patronizing and a lot of other male things that made it awkward and uncomfortable. So I'm really excited to have like more of a safe space to, like, we're all learning and we're all writers. We're all excited to give it a shot.
Yeah, that is the hardest part about D&D, is getting a time where everyone can get together, because you're going to want every session to be, it's going to be like 2 to 5 to 6 hours. You can go for a really long time. We do it weeknights. We usually go about 2.5 hours, and we meet once a week, and that's that's pretty normal. What some people do is they meet once a month and they like spend the whole day together. They do it for 8 hours. I think remotely, I don't think you can do that as much.
Right.
If you're all sitting together in the living room, it's a little easier to just kind of hang out all day, because you're talking, you order a pizza, you get up, you move. But if you're sitting in front of your computer on a Zoom call, they can get a little tiring. But yeah, the hardest part is scheduling, is finding a time when everyone can do it. But do it, because I find it for now, it's a great social outlet, because I don't have any otherwise. It's a great creative outlet, because there's seriously some amazing storytelling that you can do through this medium. That's, I would recommend going to things like the Not Another D&D podcast or Dimension 20, and listening to that Adventure Zone, especially their first season, the first campaign they did. Balance. There's some amazing storytelling that happens.
And this is the most, like, before we go, this is the most popular sort of RPG, but there are others that are...
Oh, there's tons.
There's tons of tons. Right.
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is kind of, the big mama one, but And the campaigns you can do, the adventures you can do in Dungeons and Dragons don't have to be that stereotypical Tolkien high fantasy stuff. Like I said, I'm doing one that's horror based. You could, I mean, they have a Rick and Morty module you can do. You can play in a modern day. You could do the Dimension 20 did one in a high school. They're doing one and one in New York.
Oh, that's cool.
Modern day New York. You can do it whatever you want. But yeah, there's also other RPGs. Pathfinder is another one of the bigger systems. The one Star Wars has some RPGs, and they kind of have their own system, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of that system is. I know you guys are screaming it right now. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm excited. I want to dig in.
I can't wait. I want you to do it. Let's roll up a character right now. It's gonna be great. Yeah, there's a steep learning curve, but you'll figure it out.
Where is there not? I mean, like anything that's worth it, there's a decent learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, it can get a little intimidating. There's some things that can help also. We got to wrap up, but if you use something like D&D Beyond, which is a website, or Roll20, which is another website that has a little online tool, they can help with the character sheets and can do some of the math that comes into it, because there is some math. You roll the die and then you add this factor and then you add this factor, and that can get kind of overwhelming, especially if you're not mathematically inclined. But I am not a super big math person, but that's why I have computers. They do it for me. And so, yeah, I use like D&D Beyond and Roll20 to do all my math for me. Or you can even use an app that'll do that stuff. But, so that can be a little scary, but don't let it throw you.
Love it.
Cool. Well, by next week, I expect to hear all about well, maybe not next week. We'll give you a little more time. Hear all about your campaign. And before I know it, you'll be collecting dice like the rest of us.
Yeah. I mean, this is really just an excuse for me to collect dice. So
it's real. The struggle is real. I think we've geeked out enough, and we'll wrap up for today. So let us know if you play D&D, what you like to do. I think it's a great thing for writers. And yeah. So on that note, I'll remind you that writing is hard.
So take it easy.
I'm Mary.
And I'm Melissa.
Bye, guys.
Bye.